Hello, and thank you for joining us for this Energy Access Relief Fund Helpdesk workshop on stakeholder engagement and grievance redress mechanism. My name is Dennis Migono. I am a communications associate at CLASP and the host of this workshop. We look forward to an informative and engaging session, but before we begin, I would like to go over a few house rules for your convenience and information. 1, this workshop is being recorded, and that recording will be available on the CLASP YouTube channel for your viewing. 2, all attendees will be issued with a certificate of participation upon completing the stakeholder matrix document that was shared on email. 3, participants are encouraged to share information freely and to respect the diversity of opinions throughout this session. 4, if you have a question or a comment, please leave it in the chat, or you could send it to me as a direct message. Finally, I take this opportunity to welcome and introduce our facilitator for this workshop, Mr. John Ambuya, who is an environmental and social safeguards specialist. Welcome, John.
As Dennis has said, I'm going to take you through a workshop on stakeholder engagement and grievance redress mechanism. This is one of the series of workshops that we've organized as part of building a capacity in environment and social management. And as Dennis has said, my name is Ambuya John. I am an environmental and social management system specialist. And I'll start the workshop by just trying to create some background on why information disclosure and stakeholder engagement is important. And first and foremost, I'd like to connect this workshop to the previous one we did about an ESMS fundamentals. When we were discussing ESMS fundamentals in the previous workshop, we talked about there being the need to undertake stakeholder engagement. And we say that it's important to identify who the stakeholders are for your business. So today's workshop will mostly be, we will try to identify the people or communities that are or could be affected by the project that you do or the business that you're operating, as well as other interested parties. And then the most important thing about stakeholder engagement is to ensure that such stakeholders that have been identified, they are appropriately engaged on environmental and social issues that could potentially affect them through a process of information disclosure and meaningful consultation. So, and another objective is to maintain a constructive relationship with the stakeholders on an ongoing basis through meaningful engagement during project implementation. But as we learn, as we progress, is that on those three objectives, it depends on the scale of the operations that you're operating. So mostly for objective 1 and 2, mostly apply for those companies that are maybe interested in maybe mini grids, installation of solar systems or mini grid systems. And for companies that are just involved in the selling of solar home systems, mostly the last objective is the one that is very important, where they'll just provide disclose information to the different stakeholders in a way that maintains a constructive relationship. So just to define a stakeholder is someone who affects or is affected by your company's products or activities. A stakeholder can be within or outside the organization. The organization here can be a business. So, and some of the stakeholder groups that we know, for example, employees, who are internal stakeholders. We have customers who are external to the business. We have suppliers who are external. We have non-profit partners, maybe NGOs operating in your country, in your country of operation. Those are external. And then you also have communities that live in the areas where you have operations. Those are external stakeholders. So any of these stakeholders can be impacted by your operations. So in order to understand how stakeholder engagement can be done, we will be going through a 5-step approach on how you can create a strategy, how you can identify your stakeholders, how you can plan to engage them, which channels you are going to use. Then also you can do follow-up on the engagement process. So the 5-step approach in stakeholder engagement in a nutshell involves, this first step is you have to have an objective. So you have to have a strategy in engaging the different stakeholders. So first you have to set a vision and level of ambition for future engagement. And to set this vision, you have to look at your past. How have you been doing your previous engagements? After that, you move to the second step, where you map all your stakeholders. So in this step, you define the criteria for identifying and prioritizing your different stakeholders, and then also select engagement mechanisms. After you've completed that, you move to the third step, where you focus on long-term goals to drive the approach that you'll take and determine what arrangements have to be put in place for you to undertake the engagement, and if there are any rules that have to be followed. The fourth step is where now you do the engagement itself, where you ensure that all the stakeholders are equitably engaged and are given an opportunity to make contributions. And in this step, you're also looking at mitigating if there's any tension during the engagement process, but also making sure that people are focused on the objective that you set in step 1. The last step is about creating an action plan. And this is mostly you from the engagement process, the agreements that are done. And in this step, you just create action plans to address the agreements that are agreed. And then you revisit, did the engagement go according to the goals that you set in step 1? And then also you put in place steps for you to undertake a follow-up with the stakeholders. So before we move to the stakeholder engagement strategy on how you can go about it, first I'd like to say that you need first to understand, before you create an engagement strategy, you first need to understand what stakeholder engagement means for your business, and also the goals that you've set or the vision you've set for your business, your mission, and also how far do you want to go with the engagement. So the 3 questions suffice here. The first one is what is stakeholder engagement for your company? Are you going to just be disclosing information, or you're going to disclose information and also expect feedback from the different stakeholders? And then what objectives are you trying to achieve with the stakeholder engagement? And then also, how far can we go as a company with stakeholder engagement? So the most important question here is there a business case for your company to engage in stakeholder engagement? Or is just an exercise of public relations? Or you just want to tick some boxes, maybe by your investor or any other stakeholder that you've identified. So, but it's important for us to know as business people that stakeholders that choose to engage with their companies usually expect the interaction to generate change, which is and it's a mistake for a company or for your business to treat stakeholder engagement as a one-way information dissemination process, rather than as a dialogue between you and the specific stakeholder. So as you gear up for developing a strategy, and you're trying to identify a business case for undertaking the engagement. First, you need to know why stakeholder engagement is important. So in the next 2 or 3 slides, we're going to delve into that. The first benefit of engaging in stakeholder engagement is financial resilience. The value of many years of stakeholder engagement is often proven during times of crisis. If you've been engaging with your stakeholders regularly, they might be able to be abreast of all the developments that are surrounding your industry or maybe your business. So sometimes that if there's a crisis, then it doesn't come as a surprise to them. They will have known the direction that the industry is taking. So the other benefit is return on equity. Better stakeholder relationships help companies to build good customer and supplier loyalty. For employees, the turnover is reduced, and also the reputation for the company is improved. And these areas are very important in terms of building a competitive advantage and corporate value for your business. The other benefit is about valuation. Stakeholder perception has significant effects on the valuation of your company. There's a study that was done by McKinsey and Company that determined that 30% of corporate earnings are affected by the company's reputation with the external stakeholders. So, and here I can give an example of, I think in the first quarter of 2022, there's some information that came out that Tesla had been blocking engagement with the employees in terms of their right to unionize and also to having a good working conditions. And immediately, if you look at the market or the corporate valuation of the company, it experienced some dip during that time. So the other benefit is reduction in costs, and poor stakeholder engagement can lead to a variety of direct and indirect costs. And mostly this is about maybe if you're not engaging your stakeholders such as regulators, they might come and shut down your operations. This means that your business cannot progress, and you'll be incurring costs. And if you're undertaking maybe construction for a mini grid, if the contractor is not progressing with their work, then but and they continue billing you, then it means that you're engaging with in a loss-making entity. So the other benefits of stakeholder engagement, I'll let Edward Freeman do the talking.
Stakeholder theory is an idea about how business really works. It says that for any business to be successful, it has to create value for customers, suppliers, employees, communities, and financiers, shareholders, banks, and others, the people with the money. It says that you can't look at any one of those stakes, or stakeholders, if you like, in isolation. Their interest has to go together. And the job of a manager or an entrepreneur is to figure out how the interest of customers, suppliers, communities, employees, and financiers go in the same direction. Now, think about how important each of these groups is for a business to be successful. Think about a business that's lost its edge with its customers, that has products and services that its customers don't want as much, or that they don't want at all. That's a business in decline. Think about a business who manages suppliers in a way that the suppliers don't make them better. The suppliers just take orders and sell stuff, but the suppliers aren't trying to make a business more innovative, more creative. That's a business that's in a holding pattern and probably in decline. Think about a business whose employees don't want to be there every day, who aren't using 100% of their effort and their energy and their creativity to make the business better. That's a business in decline. Think about a business that's not a good citizen in the community, that routinely ignores or violates local custom and law, that doesn't pay attention to the quality of life in the community, doesn't pay attention to issues of corporate responsibility, of sustainability, of its effects on civil society. That's a business that's soon to be regulated into decline. And think about a business that doesn't create a value, doesn't create profits for its financiers, its shareholders, banks, and others. That's a business in decline. So stakeholder theory is the idea that each one of these groups is important to the success of a business, and figuring out where their interests go in the same direction is what the managerial task and the entrepreneurial task is all about. Stakeholder theory says if you just focus on financiers, you miss what makes capitalism tick. What makes capitalism tick is that shareholders and financiers, customers, suppliers, employees, communities can together create something that no one of them can create alone.
That is just a reiteration on how business can also create and deliver value for the different stakeholders. So, and it reminded me of a quote I got in a book that I've been reading. The book is 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by somebody called Oliver Bachman. So he says that almost everything worth doing, from marriage to parenting to business or politics, depends on cooperating with others, and therefore on exposing yourself to emotional uncertainties of relationships. And remember that what Freeman has said there is that if a business is an entity, a business is operating in an ecosystem. The ecosystem, we have stakeholders, we have the processes of production, delivering value to the different stakeholders and everything else. So a business entity must subject itself to the interests of other people. And that quote from that book, 4,000 Weeks, it says that stakeholder engagement is everywhere. It can be at home, it can be at work, it can be in business. Even at work, when people are hiring, there's something that is put in the job description where they say that you have to be a good team player and so forth. So stakeholder engagement is inevitable. It's something that we have to do as we continue to live. We are advised to focus on where stakeholder engagement can have the biggest impact on your strategy and operations. And I think Edward Freeman in that video has tried to identify the areas. We are advised to focus on where stakeholder engagement can have the biggest impact on your strategy and operations. And I think Edward Freeman in that video has tried to identify the areas, different areas where you can see your business will have the biggest impact. And then you have to define and lead a cost-effective and impactful stakeholder engagement activities. If you have no objective for engaging stakeholders, anything you do and you spend your resources on is just a waste. You have to define really what is your objective for it to be cost effective. And then in order for you to have a clear vision for engagement, you need also to learn from your previous engagement with the different stakeholders. And in learning from that, you look at your goals. And if you look at the goals that were set for that engagement, you make a determination of whether the goals were realized, or you need to make adjustments on the objectives. And then the other thing that you look at when you are designing a vision, you clarify the business case for engagement. For example, if you are selling solar home systems, you say we will engage with our customers, or maybe we'll share information about the product that we are selling to them, or maybe and sharing that information, that disclosure, will use our salesman. Maybe we can be updating them on the repayments on their system, and so on. So, and then the last thing is about understanding and managing stakeholder expectations. More times you find that you go with an objective to do a stakeholder engagement. Maybe you're disclosing information about a mini grid that you want to construct. But when you go to the people that you want to engage, another issue about the poor state of the road comes up. So you see now that becomes a divergent topic from whatever that you had set to engage the different stakeholders. So you have to really manage the expectations of the stakeholders. If it's a road, you tell them that they are road authorities. Maybe you can alert them about the issue, and they can come and do an independent stakeholder engagement on that. But you just focus on the mini grid that you want to construct. So the progress on creating that strategic vision is you start from the history, and then you set the vision. You know why you're engaging the stakeholder or the stakeholder group, and then you identify who has a stake to be engaged, and how you can engage them. So the do's and don'ts when you're setting that vision is, the do's is you always link the engagement strategy to your business strategy. It has to be meaningful. It has to contribute to the creation of value for your business. And then you focus internally before going externally. And by this, I mean, you have to get buy-in from your employees or even your investors. So you have to have champions. You have to have people who are responsible for stakeholder engagement within your business before you start engaging the external stakeholders. And then the other thing I think we've talked about it is you learn from experience. So where did you succeed? Where did you fail? So what you don't do when you're creating the vision is you don't choose stakeholders without deciding on your objectives first. You have to have an objective for engaging before you select or you map your stakeholders. And then you jumping directly to choosing an engagement format is also not advised. You maybe you're doing meetings. You've already decided that I'm going to do a meeting, but what you need maybe is just to use a few questionnaires or a survey to engage that stakeholder. And then also you don't need to ignore the voices from inside the company. Your staff have experience engaging with some of the stakeholders, so you have to really listen to them when you're designing your engagement strategy. So the second step now on stakeholder engagement, you have to identify who are your key stakeholders, where they come from, and what is their relationship to your business. So, and when you do this, we call this process stakeholder mapping. So for you to be effective in this mapping, this mapping has to be informed by the strategic vision that you've set in step 1. And always remember that it's a collaborative process of research. You have to, when you're answering the 3 questions, who are your key stakeholders, where they come from, and what is their relationship to your business, you have to research, you have to do analysis, you have to debate maybe internally and have discussions on those questions. And then you look at multiple perspectives, you look at the strategic vision, and then now you say you have to identify a key list of stakeholders from the long list that you had identified from mapping. So the four phases of stakeholder mapping. The first one is you list the relevant groups, organizations of people. You identify their focus areas in the first phase. And then you analyze and rank the stakeholder relevance. I think we'll look at that in the next slides. And then you map, you visualize the relationship to objectives and to other stakeholders. And then the last step of that stakeholder mapping is you choose the engagement approaches. So it's very difficult for you to use one approach to engage all the stakeholders, as different stakeholders have different needs and expect different discussions from you. So for example, when you are doing the long list, when you are doing the mapping, maybe you identify that you have owners of the business. So we are talking about investors, shareholders, financiers. We have customers, we have employees, we have the industry, and in the industry, we are talking about competitors, we are talking about suppliers. Sometimes we have the communities that you're operating in. Sometimes you have government, who are mostly policymakers and regulators. And then you have civil society organizations that operate in your area. So after the long list, now you move to the next phase where you do the analysis in order to have a short list of specific stakeholders that you're going to engage. And when you're doing the analysis, you can look at around 6 parameters. You can choose maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4, or all the 6 parameters. So the first parameter you look at is the influence. Is the stakeholder a key shaper of opinion in the field? Expertise. You look at, does the stakeholder have knowledge on the issue that is of value to the company? Orientation. You look at, is the stakeholder group proactive or highly engaged with business? And then vulnerability. You look at the company or the project, whether the company or the project that you want to do will directly impact lives of this group. So when you move to capacity, you look at if you've chosen to the vulnerable group, you look at do they have resources to engage with you? So by doing that, you're looking at their capacity. So that will be able to inform whether when you're doing the engagement process, if it's a meeting, then you have to organize a meeting closer to where they are so that they are able to attend it. And then trust. Is there a mutual trust between you and the stakeholder? Or you're engaging a stakeholder who has already filed a case in court against your company? So all those parameters and dimensions, you look at them and depends on what really matters for your business. Next, I think we are going to look at some of them. And for each parameter, you try to rank. You just use a simple scale where you say low, they have low influence, maybe they have medium expertise, maybe they have high orientation. So you look at that simple scale, low, medium, and high. So the next phase, you in terms of stakeholder mapping, you create a map. For example, here we are trying to plot the stakeholder expertise and influence. So on the y-axis, we have the expertise, and on the x-axis, we have the influence. So on that lower left box, we have stakeholders who have low expertise and low influence. And on the upper right box, we have stakeholders who have high expertise and high influence. And then on the other boxes, we have also maybe low expertise and high influence. And if you are looking at the vulnerability, you look at on the left, vulnerability and orientation. Look at if the stakeholder has high vulnerability and low orientation, or on the lower right, low vulnerability, and high orientation. So all these aspects will help you like rank or classify your stakeholders. And then now you can determine how to engage them, what approach to use to engage them. So there are different approaches that you can use to engage the stakeholder or the stakeholder groups, and it depends on the ranking that you've done in the previous step, the previous phase. So you can choose to just monitor what the stakeholder is doing. You track their positions and research what they're all about and what discussions they've done with other parties. And then you can also message. You adapt communication scope and messaging to meet their expectations of the stakeholders. You can also advocate. You collaborate with them by enlisting their support for a specific effort or position. And this does not necessarily imply that the company will change its approach or direction. So for instance, you need to clarify maybe a position that your company has taken, or maybe plastic waste in response to stakeholder criticism. So the other engagement approach is consult. In this approach, the engagement becomes deeper because you solicit explicit feedback that is intentional or input on a project or a plan. And it implies that expectation by the stakeholders that the company will make concrete changes based on the consultation. So mostly this is done maybe when you are doing an environmental and social impact assessment, where you inform the stakeholders about the project. You try to predict the environmental and social impacts, and then you invite them to give their explicit feedback and input about the project and also the environmental and social impacts. So, and then the other approach, as you go deeper into engagement, you collaborate with the stakeholders. And in this step, you initiate and participate in a two-way dialogue focused on mutual learning and solutions. So, and in this step, you can co-create on new ideas. You can collaborate on creating new ideas and approaches. So, for instance, here you can consult with the local community and political groups to determine the most mutually beneficial options for maybe a social investment. And the deepest level of stakeholder engagement is where you innovate, where you come together with a specific stakeholder, you agree on common objectives of the company and the stakeholder, and then and those objectives can include the co-creation of new ideas as well as co-implement. So if you try to match up the engagement approaches to the map that we did, and when we are ranking the different stakeholders, you can see in the lower left box where we are doing monitoring, you just check in occasionally and provide key information. So those are stakeholders who have low expertise, low vulnerability, low influence, and low orientation. If you look at the upper right, these are stakeholders who have high expertise, high vulnerability, high influence, high orientation. In that case, you consult with them, you collaborate with them, and innovate with them. So what you do mostly, you engage with them regularly, you educate them thoroughly about the different issues that the company is working on. So for the other boxes, left upper, in messaging, these are stakeholders who have high expertise, high vulnerability, but have low influence and orientation. Those ones you just keep in the loop and encourage them to participate in company activities. For stakeholders who have high influence, high orientation, but low expertise and vulnerability, you advocate. So you monitor the activities closely and you give them access to information that they may be requesting. So that map also helps your business to do like planning in terms of allocating resources. So how many people or expertise do you allocate in each stakeholder segment? You can see for when you're just doing the monitoring, you don't need a lot of resources. But the contrary happens when you're doing collaboration, innovation, and co-creation. So you've done the ranking of the different stakeholders. You've identified the approach that you're going to use. So now you just come to checking. Is the list that you've identified focused on the relevant stakeholders who are important to your current and future efforts? And then also, do you have a good understanding of where the stakeholders are coming from and what they want, and whether they'll be interested in engaging with your business and why? And then also you look at, have you done enough research about the different stakeholders? So how can you further understand them? So you have a discussion at the company level, and also you try to do further research by referencing reports from the industry, and also doing some research about the stakeholder. You look at their public profiles and also their opinion on specific topics. And then also you look at, have you made a consideration on the type of resources that you need? Maybe what expertise do you need? What number of staff do you need? What budget do you need to allocate to support your engagement strategy and also follow-up activities? So when in step 3 and 4, when you are preparing for engagement or undertaking the engagement itself, first, as we've been saying, you have to be focused. You make your expectations clear and realistic for engaging a particular stakeholder. You have to engage the stakeholder in a timely manner. So, for example, when you're doing maybe an environmental and social impact assessment, you have to engage the different stakeholders during the planning stage of the project. So if there are any design changes that have to be done, they are done then. And if you are selling solar home systems, if you want to share product information, you have to do that before even selling that product to a given customer, for them to understand what they are buying and what they need to do for them to benefit, to really get benefit from that product. So, and then you also have to check. This mostly applies to maybe projects that involve maybe construction. You have to check and see if you're engaging diverse stakeholders. For example, are you engaging the vulnerable communities living near the project? Are you engaging the different regulators? Are you engaging maybe contractors? Are you engaging maybe the employees that are involved in the construction, and so on? So, and also make sure that stakeholder engagement does not exclude vulnerable groups. So we make sure that if it's a community meeting that you're doing, you have representation from women, you have representation from youth, and you have also representation for people who are disabled. And as we said at the beginning, stakeholder engagement has to be respectful, and you should not engage in an act of talking down to the different stakeholders, because the stakeholders expect you to disclose information, and you engage with that in a dialogue with them. So you have to be very respectful. And then also the last one, I think candid mostly ties in with being focused. You have to be transparent in terms of who the participants are. And then also you have to take notes. You note down the actions and the outcomes from the stakeholder engagement. So in the previous step, we're just making sure that the engagement has been designed to inform and improve the preparation process. So we started by setting the goals and strategic vision. We mapped and prioritized the stakeholders, and then also we selected the specific engagement approaches. Now, after that, you need to go to a specific format within the different approaches that we selected. And that also is guided by the kind of ambition that you have for your business. So what are some of the formats that you can get under the approach where you're really engaging the stakeholder deeply? For example, in innovation, collaboration, and consultation, what are the formats for messaging, advocating? What are the formats for monitoring? So when it comes to that highest level of engagement where you're innovating and collaborating and consulting, there are several formats that you can use. The first one, I think it's very common in business. So maybe you create a joint venture. You create a joint venture or a partnership. The other format you can use is you get an external advisory council. The third one is a collaboration workshop. The other one is about joint research. And then the other one is about you collaborate with the stakeholder to create a summit where you can discuss the different issues that are outstanding. So when it comes to the approach on messaging and advocating, the format you can use is you publish a sustainability report about your operations. You can do a survey. I think that is very common. You can do a town hall meeting. Mostly I see businesses doing newsletters. Some do social media outreach and conferences. So now, if you are using the monitoring approach, maybe you can start a marketing campaign and you track the different reactions by maybe your customers, as if they're your chosen stakeholders. And then you also monitor your online and social media activities and the activities of your stakeholders. And then also you encourage the stakeholder to subscribe to if you have a newsletter or a blog, so that they get first-hand information from the company. So, and for you to choose a format that matches the issue at hand and the type of stakeholder and the situation, you look at how familiar are you with the stakeholders that are involved? What has been your relationship in the past? What research or pre-work has been done already? And then you also look at frequency. For example, how many meetings do you need? And if there is any ongoing dialogue that will be required. And then the last criteria you can use is guidance and facilitation. Will the engagement be managed directly by the company representatives or facilitated by a third party? Sometimes you get businesses getting somebody to undertake stakeholder engagement for them. Maybe it's a company that is doing communication for them and so on. So you choose, are the company's employees going to be involved directly, or you're going to use a third party? So if you're going to do an in-person engagement, there are several factors that you have to bear in mind. You look at what is the profile of the stakeholder that you're engaging in. Is it just one representative, maybe from a government agency, or you have many people, maybe from the community, or you have representatives from different organizations? So you look at that profile, and also need to know, are you dealing with senior people who have power to make decisions, or you are dealing with people who are directly impacted by the project, or you are dealing with somebody who has already filed a complaint about your company? So that profile will engage you to choose a format that will be good, and a format that will be effective in engaging your stakeholders. So you have to look at the complexity of the issue at hand. Is it one issue? Are there multiple issues? And then what are the level of seriousness around the issue? And what are the potential impacts? The last criteria is it's about trust and credibility. Does the stakeholder trust your company? And then also the relationship between the different stakeholders. What does what is the credibility does each stakeholder have with the other? The stakeholders that cannot sit maybe in one sitting, you have to do different meetings when you're engaging them. So if you've chosen a format as a verbal exchange with the stakeholders, you have to consider all those pros and cons of such conversations, and you decide on the best approach that meets your objective that you set in step one. Do you need maybe to just do an online discussion? Is doing a teleconference enough to meet that objective? Do you need one-on-one meetings, or you need to have a forum or a community meeting, or you need just to have an event where you disclose information, maybe about your products and so on? So I think this is just a summary of the different issues we've been talking about the profile of the different stakeholders. If they have authority, is the meeting formal? The participation, are they able to understand, to participate in the engagement or not? And in terms of participation, you have to help the stakeholders prepare for the meeting. So you have to issue a notice in advance, and in the notice you state the clear objective of the engagement, and then you clearly state the agenda. If it's a meeting that you're going to do, what will be your agenda of the meeting, so that you manage the expectations. And then in the meeting also, you have to allow equal contributions you focus the discussion and also manage cultural dynamics. For example, here in Kenya, there are communities where you have to do 2 meetings, one for men and one for women, as they cannot sit in one meeting together. So you have to understand all those cultural dynamics. And when it comes maybe to religious factors, maybe if you are in an area where you have a lot of Christians, you cannot do an engagement on Sunday. Or if there are a lot of Muslims, you cannot do an engagement on Friday. If you are doing maybe on Friday, you have to do it early morning, or you push it to another day. So all those factors have to be considered if you are doing one-off meetings, and always make sure that you get data from the engagement. So you have to have like a list of the participants in the engagement, a summary of the issues that were discussed, what were the concerns, what were the expectations, what are the expectations from the different stakeholders. And then also you have a summary of the discussions, and then also the outputs from the meetings. Are there any decisions that were made, any action plans, any proposals that were done, and any recommendations? So the last step in undertaking stakeholder engagement is about acting on the action plans, on the decisions that were agreed on in for each stakeholder format. And as I indicated during the introduction, in the slides I say that all the stakeholders that engage with their business expect change from the engagement. They just don't do it for the sake of it. So you have to put action plans in place, action plans in place, and where you translate the findings, the insights, and the agreements that you did in the meeting, and then you communicate the actions to the stakeholders. So you have to go back to, if it was a meeting, you look at the minutes, and for each issue that was raised in that meeting, you prepare a response. And the response has to be very clear and explaining the rationale for your action as a business. And this is very true, especially when the response is that you're not going to take any action. So for each potential next step, consider the concerns and the perceptions. And then also, when you are doing the action plans, you have to clearly define the roles and responsibilities for implementation, for the different milestones and the timelines for completion. And because most of this process will be internally, you have to first consult your staff members or your employees before you allocate them any responsibilities to follow up on the action plan. So in wrapping up the fifth step, as we said in the beginning, that you're engaging in a dialogue with the different stakeholders. So you have to share the information back to them. You notify them on the progress on the different agreements that you made. And if there's any ongoing agreement that is planned, you have to have a clear mandate. If you need a specific stakeholder to be coming maybe quarterly to a company to help in implementing the different action plans, you have maybe to create a budget for them to be traveling to a specific business to do that. And then also you have to, because you are disclosing information about your business, you have to remind them about confidentiality and also what information they can share and what information they cannot share about your business. So the final word on stakeholder engagement is usually you have to keep your word. You cannot make agreements with the different stakeholders, have action plans, but at the end of the day, you are not able to honor them or manage the different expectations of the stakeholders. So one of the objectives of engaging stakeholders is to address their grievances. So next we are going to look at how to implement a grievance redress mechanism for addressing stakeholder issues. And one disclaimer is that a grievance redress mechanism should also be adapted to the scale of the business. So it is expected that people who are only dealing with the selling of solar home systems will have a different grievance redress mechanisms to people who are maybe involved in construction and operating mini grids. So we have a question here. Maybe you can just note what are some of the grievances that your business is likely to meet or is encountering in its operations now, and how do you handle them? So when you answer the second part of that question, most probably we are talking about if you have a mechanism for handling the different grievances that are highlighted. So under this part of the workshop, we are going to look at the basics about grievance redress mechanism. And then the next step, we are going to look at how you can design one for your business. And as we have said, it depends on the scale of your operations. And then the last step we look at is about implementing the grievance redress mechanism. So according to the Center for Poverty Analysis, CPA, grievance redress mechanisms are institutions, instruments, methods, and processes by which a resolution to a grievance is sought and provided. So we should take note of the word institutions, the word instruments, the word methods, and the words processes. So the mechanisms are varied when you're talking about GRM. So for example, in this figure, you can see that if for example, the individual in green has a grievance, it can go to, maybe if the individual is a member of a bigger group, he can go to the bigger group with the grievance for resolution. So if not, the individual can go to the legal system that is inherent in the country, or the individual can, if he's working in a project, the project must have like a specific grievance redress mechanism. Or if the individual is not able to go to that, he can seek the services of a public administrator. In Kenya, mostly people go to chiefs. And then the individual can lastly go to maybe a people's representative. This can be an elected leader, member of parliament, member of county assembly, who are closest to the individual. So the group, the same, if the group has a grievance, I think we'll follow the same cascade of mechanisms to try and resolve that grievance. So why is a grievance redress mechanism important? It provides a predictable, transparent, and credible process to all parties, resulting in outcomes that are seen as fair, effective, and lasting. So other benefits of a GRM to stakeholders. So it provides a cost-effective method to report their grievances and complaints. It establishes a forum and a structure to report their grievances with dignity, and also access a fair hearing and remedy. And then the other benefit is provides access to negotiate and influence decisions and policies of a project that might adversely affect them. And then the other benefit is it facilitates access to information. So there we have other benefits of a grievance redress mechanism. It can also provide an avenue for complying with the government policies that are in place. It provides a forum for resolving grievances and disputes at the lowest level. And then it also facilitates effective communication between the project or the company and affected persons. So, and then there's that last benefit about avoiding project delays and cost increases and improving the quality of work. So mostly if there are any issues that have been raised to the stakeholders, remember we say that the engagement has to be done in a timely manner when we are talking about stakeholder engagement. So if the engagement is done in a timely manner, the issues are raised on time and they're acted on, you're able to avert the delays and also achieve cost efficiency. And if the complaints are maybe from your employees or staff, and you address them, you're able to improve their working conditions. So what are the characteristics of a good grievance redress mechanism? The grievance redress mechanism has to be public and known to all stakeholders. And it has to bear a systematic way of recording and monitoring the progress or resolution of an issue that has been raised. So it has to have multiple steps, and those steps start from where a grievance is received, how it moves through the hierarchy till the final stage where it's resolved and communicated back to the person who raised the initial grievance. So another characteristic is a grievance is accessible to all stakeholders. And it doesn't matter about the economic status, if they are ready, if they are they have literacy or not, their ethnicity, caste, religion, gender, and disabilities. So if you're doing a GRM in an area where people maybe do not understand English, you have to translate that GRM into the local languages so that they can understand. And if the people are poor, you have to maybe hold a meeting at their level and communicate the GRM to them. So they should not be excluded because of their particular profile in the society. So, and also for a good grievance mechanism to be, it has to involve the participation of the different stakeholders when it's being designed, when it's being implemented, and also the different operational processes that are involved. So, and also a GRM has to be assuring to the different stakeholders so that they can raise their issues without fear of intimidation and retribution. So the other characteristic is a GRM has different levels that allows for appeals, has a reasonable time frame, and possesses values, attitudes, and commitments to fairness and justice. So these are still characteristics of a GRM. I think you can go through the slides and get to know them. But in a nutshell, the most important thing is a GRM is should be transparent, open to all, have different levels, and also have measures in place where resolutions can be done and reported back to the people who initially raised the grievances. So grievances cannot be avoided entirely, but something can be done to reduce them to manageable numbers and their impacts on maybe the business or if there's a specific project. And the first step about people who operate businesses is the acceptance that grievances will occur, and dealing with the grievances is part of the work that has to be done, and planning has to be done in order to include them in the work plans that we do. So in order to do the planning, the implementers of a GRM have to provide sufficient and timely information to stakeholders. If your stakeholders are employees, you have to provide information. If there is an employee manual, you have to give the employees time to read it and sign off. If it's communities, you have to disclose information to them first. And when we are talking about stakeholder engagement, we say that the engagement has to be meaningful. It has to be directed or guided by the strategic vision that you develop in step one. So if you conduct meaningful stakeholder consultations, it means that you're already engaging in a grievance prevention exercise. And then the other thing you can do is to build the capacity of staff, particularly if you have any community facilitators or liaison officers and other field staff, to resolve the different grievances that will be raised by your stakeholders. So the second step, after understanding the rationale or the business case for a GRM, is now you need to set goals, objectives, and scope of the GRM. And just like we were talking about stakeholder engagement, you need to have a clear set of goals and objectives and a well-defined scope for a grievance redress mechanism. So for the goal, you should be able as a business to respond to the question of why do we wish to establish a GRM? The objective or purpose, you respond to the question of what do we expect to achieve from a GRM in the short term and the long term. And scope, you should respond to the question of what are the issues to be addressed by the GRM. So it is recommended that a GRM, if you're dealing with people who are vulnerable, we call them the affected persons. You have a GRM that is closest to them, and specifically focus on addressing issues that are near to or of concern to them. So sometimes you can get that a GRM has maybe has frequently asked questions that responds to most of the issues that will be raised by affected persons and so on. So, and then also when you are designing a GRM, you have to anticipate, as I've said, you have FAQs. You try to do early identification and understanding of the type of grievances that are likely to be raised by persons affected by the project. So some of the questions are, how are affected persons likely to express their grievances? Which institutions do they approach, or are they comfortable with to find redress? What may prevent certain groups, especially vulnerable ones, from raising their grievances or concerns? What kind of relationship, actual or perceived, do the affected persons have with the project executing agencies? And then what kind of redress do they expect from their grievances? So the next step after anticipating the types of grievances, you provide a structure that explains how the GRM works, the roles and responsibilities, the people that have been assigned to the different units, the personnel and the agents responsible for handling different aspects of the resolution process. For example, you have to clearly specify who is responsible for receiving the grievance, who will record the grievance, who will sort the complaints, who will do the investigation or the assessments, and who's responsible for the resolution process, who will be coordinating the entire process. And then after resolution, we'll be monitoring any agreements that have been done. And then one thing to note is that GRM should fit into the existing national system. For example, if there is a legal system in a country, a GRM should not run parallel to that. It should provide an opportunity whereby if a stakeholder is not satisfied with the resolution, they can still go to court to seek redress. So as part of designing the GRM, next you establish procedures and timelines. So we've talked about receiving, recording, and handling the complaints. So we need to have clear procedures. We talked when we are doing the ESMS fundamentals, the previous workshop, we talked about how you can go about putting in place procedures to guide your operations in environmental and social management. So here we are talking about now procedures for receiving, recording, and handling complaints. So how does your company conduct its initial assessment of grievances? How to refer grievances to appropriate units or persons? You have to make a determination on the resolution process. How are decisions made? What are the parameters and standards for accurate and consistent decision making? Directing relevant agencies responsible for implementing decisions. And how do you notify the complainants and other affected parties of eligibility, the resolution process and the outcomes? And then how do you do tracking, monitoring, documentation, and evaluation of the grievance? So as we've said previously, you need to have You have to appoint people internally. Also, this depends on your scale of operations. You have to appoint people who are in charge of handling grievances, and also if the project also has some involvement of administrators, government administrators, you also have to engage them and agree on how to handle grievances that may arise from your project. So the appointment of members has to be deliberate. You have to look for people who are qualified, people who are experienced and competent, mostly for projects that involve construction, maybe in vulnerable communities. You get mostly the GRM person is a sociologist, people who understand people relations, who has good communication skills, people who know how to, remember we said respect is part of is a good characteristic of a GRM, and upholding the dignity of the person who's making the complaint. So you have to engage people who understand this dynamics, and people who understand the company very well, its operations, people who have technical knowledge and expertise. If you're doing a mini grid, you need somebody who understands, who has knowledge about engineering, what economic impacts are going to come from the project, who understands the culture of and dynamics in the communities where the project is being done, and also the social recognition and standing. So the person who's appointed has to be respected if it's a community of affected person, he has to be somebody who's respected and has good standing. So the other step is you have to provide resources that will make sure that the GRM is implemented. You have to have a realistic budget that will sufficiently cover the cost of the operations, such as if you have to do any staffing, if you have to do any campaigns, do you need to do any capacity building? Do you need to build any infrastructure? Do you need to do any inspections? Do you need to do meetings in the community? As we say that if you're dealing with the project affected persons, you have to create awareness about the GRM. So all these things need you to allocate a budget. And as you can see in the last bullet, mostly the GRM budgets are built into monitoring and evaluation activities budgets, or if the company has any outreach or a communication budgets. So if you have to set up any institutions, the company code or human resources manual has to define the kind of institution that should be set up to deal with different grievances. So if there is a resettlement that is to be done, the company code, the HR manual has to define what kind of institution do you need. If you are doing environmental management plan, it has to define how and by whom environmental impacts are monitored. And the institutions that are set up have to have different levels so that complainants can move to a higher level if they are not satisfied with the grievance redress suggested or provided. They should also be designed to provide the appropriate responses to specific type of grievances. So when it comes to implementing, the other aspect about implementing the GRM is you have to build the capacity of the people that have been appointed. And capacity building does not only refer to providing training for and building skills of the implementers, but to a range of other capabilities for which mechanisms should be set up in place to facilitate and promote the effective service delivery. So you have to do capacity building in terms of the general orientation of the GRM, and its approaches in dealing with the different stakeholders. Whether the GRM is perceived as a complaint handling, problem solving mechanism for stakeholders, or just for receiving feedback from customers on both positive and negative aspects of the project to improve its performance. So from that, you can see maybe the two sides of the profile of the borrowers from the EARF fund. We have the ones that maybe just dealing sales. So mostly the information that you get from the GRM is just about complaints handling, maybe problem solving, maybe a solar home kit is not working, or maybe there's a complaint about tracking of the repayments and so on. But on the other side, you see there's when maybe you're constructing a mini grid, you expect to get feedback from the affected persons on the positive and negative impacts of the project at the beginning and also during operations. Maybe there is noise during the construction period. Maybe there's a lot of reflection of light when the solar panels are being laid, and it's affecting maybe the aesthetics of the community. So the other aspect about building the capacity, you have to provide information about the historical, political, and social context, why the GRM is important, what are the perceptions and facts about the project situation and affected persons. So you really have to prime the implementers on that information so that they know what they're coming into, if the relations with the community are good, if the relations with the community are bad, or they are just lukewarm. They have to get that information before they start implementing the GRM. So, and then the other aspect is about just essential skills for dealing with grievances. And then also the credibility. We say that you have to, the implementers have to have good standing among the different stakeholders. So the other thing, you have the institutions, you build the capacity, you've designed the GRM mechanism. Now you need to create awareness to the different stakeholders about the GRM. So you have to publicize it, and I think we've discussed before we say that it should be included as part of the budget. So if it's just a project, you have to, in that awareness material, you have to provide information about the scope of the project, the planned construction phases of the project, maybe the commissioning date of the project, and what are the grievances that are available. We say that you need to do an assessment and determine whether you need one GRM or you need multiple GRM to serve different stakeholders. So you have to provide that information when you are doing awareness creation. And then what are the purposes of the GRMs? If you're doing construction, is it about construction-related grievances? Is it about land acquisition? Is it about product quality? So, and so on. So, and then you also have to manage the expectations of the stakeholders. You tell them the type of grievances that are expected and acceptable to the GRMs. So any other complaints, you tell them that there are other mechanisms they can follow to get them addressed. And then also you have to provide that if you have multiple GRMs, you have to tell them who can access them and how. So the other information that you need to disclose during awareness creation is how they can report their grievances and to whom. You need to provide, if it's through phone, you have to provide a phone number. If it's through letters, you have to provide a postal address. If it's through email, you have to provide an email address. If it's through a website, you have to provide that website link. And mostly you don't provide the normal website link, the homepage. You provide the page, the link to the page where they can get the form for reporting a grievance. And then also you need to highlight the information that should be included in a complaint. So for example, if they're complaining about, we can say a solar home kit, maybe the home kit is serialized. You have to tell them that they have to provide the serial number, maybe the date that they purchased the home kit, and maybe the area that they come from. So this information can be very important in terms of getting maybe the kit to be repaired or to be replaced. And then you have to also provide procedures and timeframes for initiating and concluding a grievance redress mechanism. So you can say if we have this grievance about the working conditions, maybe it's that somebody is employed at the construction site. Say them maybe they're complaining about lack of personal protective equipment. You can say that this kind of grievance should be resolved within maybe 5 days, maybe 7 days, and so on. So I think I've talked about boundaries and limits. And then also there are also different agencies and the project implementers and funding agencies. So for example, in when we do environmental and social impact assessment in Kenya, mostly when we are doing community mobilizations, we go through the area chiefs that live in the areas where the project is happening. So because the chiefs know the area very well, so and when we are doing the engagement, we tell the participants that if they have any issues, the first person they can contact, if there is no officer at the project, they can go to the chief. And since we have very good rapport with the chief is able to contact us and escalates the issue, maybe to us or the proponent of the project. We say that GRM should not include people because of their specific profile in society. So you have to choose the communication methods. So if you are doing posters, the posters have to be displayed in public places. So if it's in a village, if you can get the office of the chief, you can put a poster there. If the project has on-site offices, you can put an office there, maybe at the offices or at the gate. Or if there are any community centers, you can put a poster there. Or maybe you can distribute brochures throughout the community. And I think this also applies to people who are selling systems. Even if you're in an urban area, There's those marketing brochures that you do, and you have to include information on how your business can be contacted in case of any issue. And then also I've talked about using the village level government officers to facilitate any discussions in the community. And if we are talking about staff grievances, is an internal memo enough? Do you need to, if it's a big project, you do need to advertise in the print and electronic media, and that includes radio. So in short, a JRM is about 10 steps when you're implementing. So the first one is about assigning focal points, having procedures for receiving and registering complaints, having procedures for screening and referring the complaints, coordinating with other JRMs that in the area, assessing the complaints, formulating a response to the complaints that have been raised, and then selecting a resolution approach to the complaint. And then you implement the approach. And then 9, you settle the issues with the complainant. And then lastly, you track, document, and evaluate the process and the results. So that is in a nutshell, what a grievance redress mechanism is all about. And as I indicated at the beginning of that second part, grievance redress mechanism is part of stakeholder engagement. And it's very important for the success of business. And if you can remember very well the video by Freeman, the issues that he raised, if you listen to the issues that he raised, some of them can be like grievances that require the business to respond to them. So thank you very much for participating in this workshop on stakeholder engagement and grievance redress mechanism. And over to you, Dennis.
Thank you for that insightful presentation, John. At this point, I would like to bring the workshop to a close. But before I do, I invite you to join us for the next Energy Access Relief Fund Helpdesk workshop, which will be held on the 6th of October from 2 p.m. East African time. We will be tackling the Google Consumer Protection Code, and the host for that particular session will be Rebecca Rhodes from Google. If you have any questions or any comments for us, please email them to helpdesk@clasp.ngo. Thank you.